Good morning, friends. So today we're going to talk about meat because part of being on the carnivore diet is meat. And the challenge with buying meat is it can be expensive. But fortunately, King Soopers every Christmas puts their big prime rib roast on sale. So this is 25 pounds of prime rib roast from which we can cut prime rib steaks. All right, I've already done 2 of these. We're getting ready to do the 3rd one, but I wanted to talk to you about this. So they put this on sale. It's normally $13 a pound. If I buy a prime rib roast at Costco, it's about 20 bucks a pound. And if I buy it at a butcher shop, it's even more. So there's an issue around quality of meat, but there's also the issue of getting meat in your bodies. And the Costco meats actually worked out quite well for us. So what I had to do was go to YouTube and learn how to cut meat. That was an interesting challenge. So the first step in that process was to find out what kind of knife I needed. You've got to have the right knife, and it's got to be sharp. This is a Victorinox breaking knife. It's their 8-inch breaking knife, which I thought was way too big. But guess what? It's not way too big when you're cutting this meat. They recommend a 10-inch. So if I'm doing more of this, I'm going to get another knife. The nice thing about the Victorinox is they're not very expensive. I think this was 40 bucks. It is a great knife. I love their knives, all the way down to a little paring knife that they sell for $6 so that if it gets binged up in the dishwasher or whatever, it sharpens up, but you can replace it. And I've had to learn how to use a sharpening stick to keep my knife sharp when I'm working. That's been a big part of this. And so when I took this out the first time, it was a bumpy road. But we're going to cut this open and then come back to you in a minute. I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this because we're going to turn it into about 20 of these beautiful steaks. This is actually a New York strip, and we're going to get the tenderloins out of this. So back at you in a minute. All right, so we're back. Now, I also want to mention that a good pair of kitchen shears, these were not expensive. These are KitchenAid. They were highly rated on Amazon. I use these all the time in the kitchen. So not like office shears. Just get yourself a pair of good kitchen shears because when we took this apart, it was juicy. There was a lot of red stuff coming out of it. So the other highly recommended tool for butchering your beef is a lot of paper towels. That's just part of it. You know what's been fun about this carnivore journey and cutting some of my own meat is there's just a connection to the meat and your food and how you're fixing it that makes the whole process better. Now, when I did this the first time, you know, when you pull this out of the bag and you look at this, this is like, what the heck am I going to do with this? So what I did is I counted the ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we came down here 3 down. And I thought, well, the first thing to do is to break it into the easy pieces. Now, 8-inch knife, not good enough for this. Good enough for everything else, but not for this. And what we're going to do is just take this and cut it in half. And I am really grateful for all the little times I practiced sharpening my knife. And we're just going to break this. It's called a breaking knife. I assume it's because we're breaking this meat in half. And you're going to see here in just a second what this has done. So when I did this the first time, it was awkward, but it was very cool. When I cut it open, and I went from that mess in the bag to looking at this. Okay, now we could take this, wrap it up, and have a nice 3-bone roast. So I've actually got another one already froze, but this could just freeze and be ready to use as a roast. But we're ready to go now. I've got 2 pieces of meat I can work with. What I'm going to do is trim some of this fat off of it, bring that down a little bit, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to turn this into steaks. So we're going to cut the ribs off. I'm just going to cut the ribs off. We'll do that later. Then we'll save the ribs because they can go in the smoker. They're little tasty treats. And we'll turn this into some steaks. And I'll be back to show you the finished product. But this is actually way more cool than it looks like. Yes, there's mess on my hands, but when you're a carnivore, you need to be connected to what you eat. All right, we've kind of trimmed it up, gotten ourselves ready. This is a manageable piece of meat. Now, I'll tell you, the YouTube channel I love is the Bearded Butchers. Those guys have inspired me to cut my own meat. However, there is a skill set that goes with this that I don't have. But how do you develop a skill set? You start. And I watched the video on how to do this about 5 times, and then I started. And again, I would rather be starting than never starting. That just seems to be the thing to do. So we've got to take these ribs off of here. And so I'm just going to come down the outside of these bones over here, the ribs over here. And you do want to be careful because I remember when I was a kid going to the butcher shop. Back in the day, there was butcher shops. And it's called Hanafy's. It was in Oyster Bay on Long Island. We lived at Theodore Roosevelt's estate. So we lived in the high-end part of Long Island with all the rich people. My dad worked for the government, but there's a little butcher shop called Hanafy's. And every time you go in there, that's where Mom got all of her meat. And the kids would get free slice of bologna, which was probably pretty good bologna. But there were a couple of those guys that were missing fingertips. And every time I cut meat, I think of those guys at Hanafy's that don't have their fingers. So slow is good. I've decided not to moniker myself as the pretty butcher, but I've decided to moniker myself as the guy who's learning to become a carnivore. You know, the fun thing about this carnivore journey, which really was unexpected for me until my friend Shelley told me how much inflammation she was getting rid of, how much joint pain she was getting rid of. And I thought I should try this. And my wife was a little bit reluctant. I said, you know, we're going to do an experiment and see what happens. Now, back to this. It's getting a little messy in here, but we don't care because we're having a meat experience and we're learning. But Shelley told me how much she had reduced her inflammation by and her joint pain and her weight, and I decided to do this. And so for 3 months, it's been great. The biggest thing is I've lost 10 pounds, but as my wife will tell you, my energy is better, my brain fog gone, my what you might want to call depression gone. There's just more energy, more vitality, more life. And I have eaten a 90 to 95% carnivore diet for the last almost 3 months. The game plan was to get through December, see where we're at, but as you can tell, I'm just getting warmed up. So these are the ribs. I can trim these up a little bit. And what I'll do the next time we're smoking is I've got these from a couple of my frozen them. I'll just put them all in the smoker and smoke them. And then we just take this beautiful cut of meat right here. And we are going to take just a little bit more of this fat off because there's no need for it. And again, I don't quite know what I'm doing, but the key is I am doing. Now I'm going to fix the nice things. I get to pick how thick I want the steak, and we're going to make it about 1 inch, which makes it go in the air fryer really nicely. And there's no bones in here now, so I can just take this and carefully. And I'll tell you what, the first few that came out were kind of ugly, but they still tasted like ribeye steaks. And this is going to go, I've got my daughter doing this. I'm butchering meat for my daughter now, Anna. And what she loves about it is we also helped her buy an air fryer. We bought the Tasty air fryer because it has a thermometer in it. And she just takes her steak in the morning. She's now eating a piece of steak every day. And she takes her steak and she puts it in the air fryer while she's getting ready for work. And it self-cooks and then it turns itself off. And then she comes out and has half of it for breakfast and takes half of it for lunch. She's not totally carnivore yet, but what's happened is she's just doing a lot better. Her energy's better. Her texture, her face is better. She's just feeling a lot better. But we made carnivore easy for her by helping her get steaks that were beautiful. So that's beautiful. We will put this in a vacuum seal bag, and I'm going to make about 10 or 12 more of those out of this. And then this is just the right thickness to put the probe in. It'll go in the air fryer. And in 20 minutes, you have lunch with no smoke, no steam in the house. We are learning, even Cheryl, yes, is learning to have fun with a better, stronger carnivore diet. We are eating a big chunk of meat every day, and it is going really well. I'll come back and give you a picture of this when it's all done. All right, so this is the first half done. Now, I cut these thick. My daughter reminded me that thick is better in the air fryer. So you can make them thicker or thinner, but we got 6 out of this half, so there'll be about 12 out of here. You can cut them any length you want. Now, the ends, when you get to the ends, there's always a little bit left over. It's kind of ugly, so this just gets cut off at the end. You don't make it into a steak, but this will get cut up into slivers, and we'll make like a fajitas thing for lunch with it today. And we've got some fat that's off of this. This, I'm going to go on YouTube and learn how to make tallow, honey. We're going to learn how to make our own tallow because we're now cooking with tallow, which is huge for us. But this is just becoming a fun process to look at my meat and know that I learned how to butcher it myself. It's helping me with my diet, my brain, my carnivore side of me. Now, what's interesting is we have 2 poodles. Y'all seen pictures of my poodles, and guess what? It turns out that poodles are not kibblers. They're carnivores. When this goes into the frying pan and it starts to cook, they are there because they say, Dad, no more kibble. We are carnivore girls. Okay, forced out. And now we have the finished product being enjoyed by Cheryl, and who is now her best friend. Abby has paid no attention to this, but once it comes to the table, it smells good. She is all in. She's actually preferring Mom put a little salt on it for her, because that's just how she likes her meat. And she's just going to wait, and then Cheryl's going to give in, and then it's going to be great to be Abby. see that again, but it was a beautiful thing to see. The joy of learning continues. I've been spending a lot of money to buy beef tallow. We pulled off all the white fat off of our roast. There's a couple pounds in here. And I've got an inexpensive meat grinder. It seems to be working just great. And we are just grinding this down, and it's coming out real nice and fine like that. Then it's going to go in the Dutch oven, go in the oven low and slow for a couple hours, and I think we're going to come out with some beautiful tallow as a result of what we've done. So we have eliminated a massive amount of waste and made something special for our bodies to eat.